And today I will focus a bit more on open and fair data in France, especially in the research data gouv. Recherche means in French research, but I will keep with the French word recherche data gouv, because we decided not to translate it, as an ecosystem for sharing and opening research data. So just for you to know that there is a legal context, since 2016 in France, we have implemented in our law a principle of open by default for all publicly funded data. That means that it's applicable in universities and research performing organizations. Of course, the open by default principles has many exceptions which are legitimate, but the law says the open should be the default when the data is mature, not when you are building it, but when it's finished, it's achieved. Which is interesting. Many French citizens or French researchers don't know this article of law, but nobody should ignore the law. So for research data, we have many issues, and I want to focus on some of them. The first one is that I often say that the digital research data library is burning. We have researches showing that the more a data is old, the more you lose it because you don't control it, you don't cure it on a professional way. You don't archive it, you don't describe it, you don't keep it outside your computer, you don't give it to a repository and so on. So we lose research data at a rapid pace. So data is disappearing, in fact. Today, every day data is disappearing from your computer for our ecosystem, which is a nightmare. There has been a research done by the European Commission estimating the cost of not having fair research data. So fair data is findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable data. By definition, if it's not well documented, if you don't understand the data, if there is no prevalence, or if you lose it, then you have to rebuild it again. So for clinical trials, for example, if you want to make a meta-analysis with the data of 20 years of history of clinical trials, and you have only access to 50%, then you have to rebuild the existing data, so you have to redo the research. So it's very expensive. So this research estimates that for France it costs more 1 billion euros a year. Maybe it's too overestimated, but it's interesting to see that we are spending money to build data, but we don't spend so much money to keep it. So, but people say always, I am a member of the G7 Open Science Working Group. I am a member of many international discussion groups. And often I listen to people saying, okay, open science is happened thanks to COVID-19. Everything was open during COVID-19 crisis. And it was the demonstration that open science was a success. Okay, I have not been in the same history of that. I think, and we consider that except for the genome that we collected very quickly, except for that, in fact, there is no change in data sharing practices during the COVID-19 crisis. And we have indicators to show that. So even a global pandemic doesn't increase the sharing practices in the academic community. So this is a very bad news, but it's interesting to keep that in mind. So COVID-19, where is the data? Still not shared. And even when people say, okay, I will publish a data sharing statement, so that means I cannot share my data because it's personal data, medical data, and things like that, but I promise in my papers, if you ask me, Roberto, if you ask me my data, I will give it to you. So it's a data sharing statement saying the condition in the way what you can share. I can share your data to me. You can share my data. No, I can share my data to you. And there has been a research to test if the data sharing statement were true. Only 6.8% of the papers provided the requested data that they promised to give. So that means that there is a long way from the theory and the discourse to the practice. So Houston, we have a problem. We don't share data. We don't share that much. And that data is very complex. There is no one kind of data. We think data, but we don't talk exactly about the same thing when we talk about organized, very big data in red, and the rest, which is in the long tail, with smaller data, less structured data, with data published in an article, but also data not published, which are in computers and personal hard drives of researchers, and data that are even not digital at all. So the long tail is far bigger than the big data. So we have to keep in mind that this is a large archipelago of different objects, different size, different quality and complexity, and there is no one model of data. So with that in mind, we thought about different solutions in the National Open Science Plan, and I will focus on some of them. Our plan is to ensure that the data produced by the French public research is progressively structured to conform to the FAIR principles, safely preserved, and whenever possible, open to all. And we want to encourage data reuse, because in fact, if we share data, it's to allow reuse of the data. And we know that if we don't change the system of evaluation, assessment of research, then we will not promote sharing. So we are also committed in the change of research assessment, like CORA that has been presented. So one of the bricks of our approach is to create Recherche Data Gov, an ecosystem for sharing and opening research data. Maybe a vocabulary point now. In the program, it is said about data, open data shared. Well, we try to make a distinction between shared data and open data. Open data is open, it's accessible to us, to all, without any condition. You download, that's it. And share, it's accessible under condition, because we know maybe 50% of the data cannot be open, because of personal information, medical information, secrets, business secrets, and things like that. And in this case, we should try to share it, we cannot open it. So this is the difference. And Recherche Data Gov is there, it's online. You see the platform, you can have access to it. It's an ecosystem for sharing and opening, or opening research data in France. So this initiative makes support a priority. Researchers with concerning research data are too often left alone. They say, okay, I want to open my data or to share my data, but where do I start? What is the legal context? Where are the tools and so on? So help and support to researcher in data management must become a priority, and it is a priority of Recherche Data Gov. And Recherche Data Gov is also a repository and a data registry. You know that there are more than 3,000 research data repository in the world, but this proliferation doesn't give a solution to all researchers, strangely. So we want to provide a repository where, when researchers don't have a community-based solution, when they have a trusted repository in their community, they should use a trusted repository, but there are many cases where there is no. And it's also not only a data repository, it's also a data registry or a catalog of data that we harvest in different repositories to have a comprehensive approach of all the data coming from French researchers. It's on the web we are building it. So again, two pillars in Recherche Data Gov: a national federation of competence centers. This is dedicated to provide support and help to researchers, and a national data platform for depositing, publishing, discovering research data. The two of these parts are very important. So again, when we go to the competence centers, so the help and the hotline and the support for researchers, we have two layers. The competence centers, data management clusters, so we call that in French Atelier de la Donnée, which is centers inside universities, close to researchers. They are there to help them. You see the map. Each point in the map, of French map, shows a data management cluster in France, close to the researchers. And we have also another layer, which is thematic reference centers, where they can provide expertise, advanced expertise in a given scientific field, because the diversity of data is so huge that when you talk about humanities and social sciences, it's not that same data that genomics or ecological information. So we have dedicated centers that provide specific expertise in these specific fields. And after 2 years of creating Research Data Group, which is a very newborn initiative, we are very happy to say that it's a successful national network with 80 research institutions involved. In France, we have 70 universities, and let's say 30 research performing organizations, let's say 100 organizations. So it's really big. For India, it's very small. I would say 80% of the research institutions are involved in France in this initiative. Sorry for being so small compared to you. We have created 36 competence centers or thematic centers, and approximately 370 people are helping researchers to manage their data. And the data repository have 55 active institutional spaces. We receive new requests for access, and we have more and more data sets deposited in the repository. Now, if I may, if I have some more minutes, I want to focus on the second part of my talk, which will be shorter, is that when we do so much efforts in providing the services, platform, repository, outlines, and so on for the researchers, is it efficient? How can we say is it efficient? I think that we absolutely need to develop open science monitoring approaches and initiatives. If we don't monitor, we are blind. We do things, we don't know if there is a success. We don't know if there is a change, or an absence of change in the culture and the usages of the research community. So we could spend money and effort in a bad direction. So open science monitoring is very important. So in France, we have decided to build the French Open Science Monitor. Here are some indicators: the number of open access papers, the number of publications that have shared their data, and we recalculate the indicator each year. 25% of the publication have shared the data last year, with an increase of 3 points this year, which is quite interesting. 19% of our publications have shared their code, and we know that only 44% of our clinical trials have shared their results, not their data, their result publications after 3 years, because they don't like to publish negative results. So it's quite very important too. So this is the French Open Science Monitor.isr.gov.fr, and it helps us to have a better idea of what's happening. Again, this figure I showed yesterday, you see the increase of sharing of data in France from 12% to 25%. But again, you see it's very slow, it's very low level, and we expect to have more. So we see it's in the good direction, but we need to accelerate. We know that thanks to open data. So the French Open Science Monitor has been created 8 years ago, and you see a line explaining different new bricks added to the Open Science Monitor. First, we started with publications, then with clinical trials, and now with research data and with software, PhD thesis also. We have decided to use only open data, no proprietary data, no Web of Science, no Scopus. We know that it is a bit difficult, but in the end we will be independent, autonomous, and we have created many indicators with open data and no closed data. We more and more use AI and open source software to produce innovative indicators. Each university can produce its local version of our monitor. So when you are a member of university, you know your indicators using our platform. And I think that there is no equivalent in the world of this structured open science monitor. Now, Netherlands has made something quite similar with using our tools, and we are very happy of people imitating us. Maybe I should add that all the code source is open too. And last but not least, I want to say that we have started another initiative which is called Open Science Monitoring Initiative, OSMI, together with UNESCO. And this initiative is to encourage at worldwide level, at UNESCO level, the adoption of open science monitoring principles and to promote their practical implementation. We need to define our own standards for monitoring open science, and we don't want to have a new Shanghai ranking of impact factor decided by companies to define where we should go. So we should be in capacity to decide what is our future. My battery is very low. It's the end of my talk, but not the end of all the talks. I want to say that this is a long-term initiative to discuss and to define standards, to know how to implement open science indicator, and that would provide comparisons between regions, universities, and countries, not ranking comparisons. Because if we don't use the same indicators, we will produce a nightmare, a very complex ecosystem. So I would like to thank you. Just another last point. So some of you have received the passport, Open Science Passport. This is a version dedicated to research data. We have a version dedicated to software, and this is the green one is dedicated to the whole open science. This passport is available online and CC BY license. Many countries have already translated it in their language and reuse it, and it's very welcome. Thank you very much.
Long live India and France friendship.